Hello and welcome to Media Musings. Good to see Godless Granny in the chat, and of course, welcome to anyone who's lurking and or might be watching in the future. Some of you might be wondering why we're opening up Disney Renaissance month with a movie that's not from Disney. And one is this month is basically conceived as talking about the Disney Renaissance as a period of animation. And the thing about American cinematic animation in particular is the history of American cinematic animation up until like 2018 has largely been a narrative of what Disney's doing and how people are reacting to Disney. So I wanted to put a counterpoint kind of episode in to discuss what other studios were doing at the time. And given how Kevin Conroy passed away at the end of last year, I figured it's best to go with Mask of the Phantasm.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna say I've actually been looking forward to this one in a way though, because I love this movie. So I am gonna have to go stick my light on in a moment. And first of all, I'm gonna also say apologies if I have some issues. The weather here is awful. There's a chance it might knock my Wi-Fi out. So hopefully I won't have too many problems. But I am gonna have to stick the light on because it's really dark in here.
Okay. Oh, so you're not going for the dark and brooding theme.
That's better. That's a lot better.
A couple of orders of business first. One, in regards to the last Media Musing stream on the American Mythos, I'd like to suggest a very good video by Knowing Better on that basically goes through the entire Thanksgiving story and debunks the popular conception of it. And a fun little tidbit I picked up from that was that how the presence of a friendly translator is usually described as divine providence in most versions of the Thanksgiving story. Well, turns out there was this English lord who had a rather, well, if you look on it back with modern sensibilities, it's kind of a fucked up hobby, to where he'd get Native Americans who were enslaved, free them, keep them in his house and teach them English, and then send them back to America. To seed America with ready-made translators.
I'm going to say this is a Disney Renaissance month. I don't know if Pocahontas is being covered, Ring, or not, but
No.
Let's just say this. And when you read the real story, you're gonna realize if you grew up in the 90s, it's like for example, I told my ex girlfriend what the real story of Pocahontas, and I think I ruined her childhood, and that's why she's my ex.
So in regards to the actual Disney movies we're covering, I'm conceptualizing the Disney Renaissance as taking part in as having three mini eras, where you have the early Renaissance, which is largely Disney doing classic Disney films, but with more polish. So that's your, that's your Little Mermaid, your Beauty and the Beast. Rescuers Down Under is kind of an outlier, but it's a sequel. So
yeah.
And then you have your mid-Renaissance where they're starting to branch out into more diverse stories, and they're making their animation more cinematic. This is where we have your Lion King, your Pocahontas.
I suppose Aladdin would have been in that era as well.
I kind of I can see Aladdin being either early or mid. It's kind of a transitional movie.
Yeah, it's halfway between, isn't it? In a sense, yeah.
And then you have your late Renaissance where they're just kind of they're kind of stuck between formula, a Disney Renaissance formula, but they're also going really experimental. And of course, that's where you have your Hercules, your Tarzan,
Mulan,
your Mulan,
yeah.
So and the three films we've kind of chosen to encapsulate each era is for the early Renaissance, we're going with Beauty and the Beast.
Yeah.
For the mid Renaissance, we're going with The Lion King.
Yeah.
And then because Noodle is a classicist, we're going with Hercules for the late Renaissance.
I thought so somehow.
Now in terms of the subject matter at hand, there are really three types of movies that were being made by other studios during the Disney Renaissance. You had whatever the hell Don Bluth was smoking that year. You had animated TV show The Movie.
Mm-hmm.
And then you had We Have Disney at Home.
Yeah. I suppose what we're covering today somewhat fits into the second category. If anything.
Yes, because Mask of the Phantasm is very much a feature-length episode of Batman the Animated Series.
Yeah.
And for context as to when in the Disney Renaissance this first aired is the wrong word, but this was released in cinemas. So Batman Mask of the Phantasm was released in 1993.
Yeah,
which
round about Christmas, wasn't it, or something? Yeah, I believe.
Which in terms of the Disney Renaissance is right between Aladdin and The Lion King.
Yeah.
So kind of keep that in mind for comparison. And yes, Mask of the Phantasm is very much TV show The Movie.
But I will say done extremely well.
Oh yeah.
And I will say that, if anyone has anyone has actually not watched the Batman animated series, it is well worth going back and watching that. I think it's definitely stood out amongst other animated shows that I remember of the time.
Yeah.
And especially for a show that is primarily, obviously, I suppose primarily was supposed to be aimed at children. While it did have quite a large adult sort of following, and certainly this movie is.
Oh yeah.
If this is a kids' film, this is a fucking dark kids' film.
Well, this is a lot of the animated TV shows of the 90s, or at least a lot of the ones that have stuck around in the public consciousness, are not what I'd like to call kids movies. They're and shows. They're what I like to call family media, where there's it's marketed for kids, but they put enough substance in there for the adults to actually enjoy it as well.
Yeah.
But so a fun fact and a little bit of a ring fit before we really get into the meat of the discussion is not only is this the first DC animated movie to have a cinematic release. So this, not only is this the first Disney animated movie, but it's the only Disney animated movie.
DC.
Yeah,
not Disney.
Yeah, DC animated movie. Because a director named Joel Schumacher made a little movie called Batman and Robin.
Yeah.
And it bombed super hard at the box office.
Yeah.
In fact, it bombed so hard that the sequel to Mask of the Phantasm was pulled from cinematic release and released direct to video. This piece is actually one of my favorite animated movies or animated videos, because I do make a distinction between whether, if an animated film gets a cinematic release, it's a movie. If it doesn't, it's a video.
Yeah.
Because there are distinctions in quality
this project originally was supposed to be a direct to video release, and it got a limited theatrical, which is why it was filmed in a sort of wider so it could go on movie screens. And I'd say actually as a cinematic release in terms of its actual run in the theaters and the cinemas, it kind of I wouldn't say, I don't know if you'd say it didn't do well. It was one of those things that it kind of was when it went to DVD. It sort of flew under the radar for a little while, and then people, when it was released to video, people were like, "Oh, this is a good movie."
My point is that also Noodle. The Fools and Horses parody was of the Batman 60 show.
That was still better than Joel Schumacher's fucking Batman movie.
So, but the point is that Batman and Robin, the Schumacher movie, bombed so hard that not only did Warner Brothers cut the Batman Mr. Freeze Sub-Zero movie because, the villain was also Mr. Freeze. And they was like, oh, we can't release a movie with Mr. Freeze because Mr. Freeze obviously doesn't work on the big screen.
Which it actually would have done if they had given him the sort of depth that the animated series had done when they actually kind of reinvented the character. But that and I suppose they gave him a little bit of that backstory with Schwarzenegger, but it just of course you're gonna get great emotional depth and great method acting out of Arnold Schwarzenegger.
So basically, because of this, DC has never had the DC animated line has always been direct to video, with the exception of Mask of the Phantasm, which is the only reason why I can include Mask of the Phantasm in this discussion, because it had a cinematic release, so it does count as a movie in my mind.
Yeah. But yes, I mean, this is truly a fantastic little movie, and like I said, it kind of flew under the radar for a little while. And it was like the famous what was it, Ebert, the famous film critic in America? Was it his name?
Well, yeah, I mean, there were if you're talking about the ones that had their own show, it was Cisco and Ebert.
So I saw a clip of Ebert actually sort of saying that because he'd seen this movie when it had gone direct to video, like almost a year after the film, and actually said, "I didn't even bother watching this film when it got its theatrical release," and he realizes what a mistake. He actually said that was such a mistake. This is like he really, when he saw this movie, it really had sung the praises of this movie.
Yeah, and well, and you can tell like the opening was definitely animated for so the film opens with a 3D rendering of the Batman the Animated Series Gotham City, which is all done in a Art Deco noir style. It's probably the most iconic depiction of Gotham to date.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, the thing is, obviously, those who have not seen the Batman animated series, there's a lot of the Tim Burton Batman influence, obviously, because those films have been released at the time. But an awful lot of like 30s, 40s noir and like detective films of those, it definitely really has that vibe, and it's I mean, in a way, it kind of does. It does really suck you into the environment of Gotham City. The what it's so it's a lot of the. I mean, sometimes it seems like it feels like a little bit blocky in some of the animation, or but it works for this. It really it's beautiful. I'm not an animation critic, but I think it's beautiful.
But for reference, for those who haven't seen Batman the Animated Series, that's a shot of what the skyline looks like, and they have the the dun 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 dun. As it would have played in the episode, except it's being sung by a choir in what sounds like Latin, but is actually not Latin. Because as I was watching it, I was doing a little bit of research, and the piece is called Masks, and it's actually the names of people involved in the production sung backwards.
Oh.
So.
Yeah, I'm not going to try saying Paul Dini and Bruce Timm's name backwards so many times, let alone Eric Radomski's.
Yeah.
But interesting. This is a little side note as well for unrelated, but just a little side note. It was Batman the animated series that actually introduced what has become one of the most popular characters in the sort of Batman's rogues gallery, and is kind of such a popular character today. Harley Quinn was invented by Bruce Timm and Paul Dini for this series.
And also, well, fun fact: the voice actress for the voice actress who would go on to originally do the voice of Harley Quinn,
or Arlene Sorkin, that's the name, isn't it?
Yeah. Actually has a line in this movie.
Oh, this is the thing as well. If you're familiar with this, you know straight away. I know that voice.
Yeah,
I know that voice.
So there's a scene where in the beginning of the movie where Bruce Wayne is throwing a gala because he's a rich playboy, and that's what rich playboys do.
Gotham's most eligible bachelor here, you know.
He gets some wine splashed on his face and goes to wipe it off, and has a backstory flashback because like noir, a lot of the story comes out in flashbacks.
Yeah.
And this is very much a retelling of Batman Year One.
Yeah, it's got elements of Year One and Year Two in this. And I mean, in Year Two, I think there was an antagonist called the Reaper, which is what Phantasm is based on, the Reaper.
Yeah, but anyways, after the flashback ends, Alfred comes and says, you know, like Brandy is dancing on the piano, and you hear. And you hear the voice of a drunken woman, and it's noticeably the same voice as Harley Quinn, but
there was another little line she had in it as well, I believe. Just before that, it was because it's sort of bit these women ask, how come you don't marry or whatever, and someone said,
oh yeah, don't talk to Bruce about the M word,
and then you hear it and you know this is Arlene Sorkin's voice.
Yeah.
So what about I can't really do it, but it's like, what about the A word? Well, engagement. Which is like, okay, so they're just getting the pattern that this woman's there just to be a bimbo kind of thing, and that's it.
Yeah. And also, you have to give major props to this movie for being the only Batman movie to delve into Batman's past and not show the Waynes getting shot.
Yeah. It's sort of, like I said, it's not. It delves into the origins. It's not really this isn't a Batman origin story. I mean, thank goodness, because how many times it's kind of been done now. It's like, okay, we know why Batman does what he does now. We've had that point hammered home an awful lot in numerous films, but this is sort of delving into more of an era with him growing up and sort of almost getting ready to, take on the role of Batman as so on. But at the same time, then having something, essentially having a curveball thrown into his life of him falling in love and being happy for the first time,
and him wrestling with the promise that he made, and the trauma that he's basically hammered into a steely resolve, and the fact that he might actually have a happy life.
Yeah.
But like in terms of though I do have to say, in terms of animation, aside from how stylized Batman the Animated Series is, it doesn't really bring that much to the table. But once again, we're looking at Mask of the Phantasm as as an example of what other studios were doing at the time, and honestly, I feel it's kind of a good example of at least the TV show, the movie, kind of brand.
Yeah, I mean, it was, as I said, because there wasn't really a lot going on at the same time. I mean, I think a little later. I mean, it's later in the 90s even, but when you got the sort of really dark Spawn TV show, but that never really got a movie adaptation. But this is. I mean, it's outside of Disney. I think that, the sort of DC animated universe was probably like the highest standard outside of Disney at that time. Really.
Well, I mean, you had quite a few different, TV shows. The movie, I think Pokemon had a movie that came out in the 90s. You had Rugrats the movie, you had Powerpuff Girls the movie, you had,
yeah,
and but
and this is what I would say as well. I remember, like, I was more a teenager during the 90s, so kind of got out of, like, obviously watching cartoons a little bit in that era. But I'll say one of the ones I still kept watching was Batman the Animated Series. It's head and shoulders above anything else that was out there at the time.
And so to answer to respond to an older comment, I'd suggest giving at least a couple episodes of Batman the Animated Series a try. They're like 30 minutes plus ads, so like if you're streaming it, it's like 20 minutes an episode. I'd suggest probably Almost Got Him as a good example.
That's a fantastic episode.
Almost Got Him, Heart of Ice. I've got Batman in My Basement.
I'm obviously going to shout for Mad Love as well, because
oh yeah, and Mad Love, definitely. That's that's the
Harley Quinn origin story.
I thought that was the one that
no, I've got the comic book right down here.
Well, no, I thought that was the one that straight up says as blatantly as you can in a children's TV show that Harley is in an abusive relationship with the Joker.
It's both. It's very much both. It's the first time Harley's been in a few episodes and she's quite popular.
Yeah,
but this is where they give her backstory her backstory and origin for the first time.
But
it was also demonstrating the fact that yes, she is in this abusive relationship, and she's almost like, if I can just get Batman out of the way, over Batman. If I could just get him out of the way, then Mr. J and I can be together. I can't really do the voice.
Mr. J and I can be together. Oh wow, that was surprisingly good.
That was scarily good, actually. Excuse me, say good evening. Say pudding ring. Gotta say pudding.
Oh, I'm gonna make some Batman pudding for my pudding.
That's scarily good.
And obviously, this is before the debut of Harley Quinn, because Arlene Sorkin is, voicing a bimbo cameo.
Yeah.
And so the plot of the movie is very much a noir mystery, because Batman once again, it's a Batman the Animated Series, the movie, and it's a good showcase of what Batman the Animated Series is about. In that it focuses on the noir and detective aspects of Batman.
Yes.
And it's very much a noir detective story, mystery. So spoilers for a 20-year-old movie. Or no, a 30-year-old movie.
30-year-old movie. God, I'm old now. I feel old now. But yeah, it's for those who've seen like that latest Batman film that got a theatrical release. It's that kind of vibe. I argue possibly better. In certain aspects anyway. But it is that kind of vibe of the roots of the character, the world's greatest detective, it's got, but so it's really, this is a movie, it's really the roots of Batman.
Yeah. And so you've basically the plot of the movie is this new figure, and this new figure costume mad person has shown up, and with their own striking fear gimmick, and they're knocking off mobsters.
So because if anyone, of course, is familiar with the Batman lore, it's the I don't kill, except all the times he does. But anyway, we'll ignore that. But it's the whole. This is that's Batman's line. That's Batman's line. I'll catch them, I'll arrest them. Yet I will put the fear of God into the criminal underworld. But he's got that lot. But now there's another person doing the same thing.
I have to.
Yeah.
Batman didn't mean to kill. Batman only meant to maim or permanently injure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this is that was. Yeah. I gotta say that in a way is like what happened with what was it? Because that was always the line with Batman or whatever. He won't kill. But then of course you had that famous graphic, the Dark Knight Returns, the Frank Miller one. It's like, okay, he might not kill, but he will maim and cripple, and he will do. Yeah,
and I'm gonna have to put like a multi-month pin in the Dark Knight Returns.
Yes,
because the Dark Knight Returns is very much a satire. It is part of the Alan Moore, Mark Miller satire, superhero satire movement, which had been severely interpreted and just turned into the edgy backlash against the Comics Code Authority. And we are going to be getting into that in March when we talk about Superman versus the Elite, which is going to be the first example on this show of a response to satire, or rather a response to the misinterpretation of satire.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and I think, it won't be the first DC animated discussion because this is, but it will be the first Superman discussion on this channel as well. So that'll be fun.
I mean, this is obviously a thing. I mean, I think with this particular movie, I mean, they'd sort of like death and murder have been sort of implied in the animated series, and this thing really kind of goes out with it. I mean, you'd see these sort of like like frozen sort of corpses, like or bodies with a Joker grin on them in the series. So it's murder was implied, but you didn't quite sort of.
It's
implied, but not actually. Yeah.
Like for the, you know what? I'm gonna go ahead and check and see what this movie is rated.
PG in the UK. I don't know what it is in the. I don't know what it's rated in the United States.
It's rated PG in the United States, and I'd probably say there's it rides the line of what you could get away with.
Yeah.
In terms of showing violence and death on.
I think if it had put a bit of blood into a couple of scenes, that would have been enough to.
Yeah, to kick it up to PG-13.
That would have tipped it over the edge to the next rating.
And in the 90s, you having a PG-13 animated movie, and I think even nowadays, having a PG-13 animated movie is basically a cinematic death sentence.
Well, even back then, I mean, generally an animated. I mean, I don't know if you've got the same similar thing. We got a rating called Universal, which is the or even there was one called Universal UC, which is like the lowest rating means, hey, basically means show that you can show this to your kids. You don't need to worry with this movie. Yeah, and it was a generally accepted thing. Animated films were all going for that rating. That was this one. I don't feel this one got a PG. It was definitely not aiming. It was like, we'll see where this goes. I don't think it was not aiming to get that universal children's kind of rating at all.
So, okay, yeah. So in America, the rating system goes G, PG, PG-13, and then R. That's basically what you'll see in theaters. And then you have not rated, which either means it's super, super kid, which either means it's below a G or above an R.
Yeah. Ours go like this. It's U, meaning universal, PG, which probably means the same thing. 12A, which is like suitable for 12-year-olds.
No, universal would probably be like a G, because G is for general audiences.
And then we got universal, then we got PG. 12A, which I guess is equivalent to PG-13, kind of like.
Yeah.
Then we got 12, 15, and 18. So they're sort of done by age, just really, so.
Well, and, PG-13 was made to bridge the gap between G, or between PG and R, because movies like Indiana Jones, when Indiana Jones was coming out, they're like, this is way too hard for a PG, but it's not really R material.
Yeah.
Well, and also, releasing an R.
I think we got off on quite a tangent on film rate like classifications, but I think it's not totally irrelevant though, because
actually it is very relevant, because animation in general, much like comic books, is a juvenilized medium. And which I have an issue with, like the juvenilization of media. And what I mean by juvenilization of media is where you cultivate the cultural attitude that a certain medium is only for kids. That's kids stuff. That's so. But the thing is, because you've cultivated that cultural attitude, like like was done with comic books, like what was done with animation, it makes it very, very easy to then censor that entire medium, because what's all this violence doing in something that's only meant for kids?
Yeah.
Why are you having these dark, complex discussions in medium that is meant for kids? And that, this is where we get people like, that school board in Tennessee banning Mouse, the only Pulitzer Prize winning graphic novel, because it's got objectionable material in it, because it's covering the Holocaust.
Yeah. But go check out. I wasn't in that conversation. Go check out that conversation previously afterwards. If you on Ring's channel about I believe Mouse is going to be coming up again at some point this year as well.
We are definitely covering Mouse for Lit Month. This year, which I do every September in I wouldn't call it a celebration, but as my tribute to Banned Book Week. I make the entire month of September about literature.
Yeah.
But so, and the fact that, you know, Batman the Animated Series got a PG rating, or Mask of the Phantasm got a PG rating.
Yeah.
This is, you know, like, this is hardcore for 90s animation. Like, for example, The Lion King has a G rating.
Yeah.
And honestly, out of the multiple deaths in Mask of the Phantasm and the death of Mufasa in The Lion King, I'd say one scarred me a lot more as a child.
Probably, yeah, but that's probably because the people getting killed in this movie are assholes generally.
And
in this Batman movie, the people getting knocked off are let's just say, are not as sympathetic as Mufasa.
And for the most part,
there's one I can see that if you were, because you're a bit younger than me, that I could see really scaring the shit out of a kid in this movie, though, the one in the graveyard.
Oh yeah,
that I could see actually legitimately scaring the shit out of a kid.
Well, yeah, and actually, that's the most like. No, actually, no. I'd say the death of Salvatore would probably be the freakiest for a kid.
Oh yeah. Actually, yeah.
But to be fair, Salvatore wasn't knocked off by the Phantasm.
No, not at all. We'll have to talk about that person later, because
so
Mark Hamill, you know.
Yes. So hold on. I'm sure I have it, but once again, since we are getting into the meat of the plot now.
I just sort of nerdy's comment there, but believe me, I can tell you now, like, there's generations of kids in Britain who hid behind their couches when Doctor Who was on at times. As daft as that might seem to sound now, it was quite scary at times.
Oh, I mean, even Modern Who is like, at least Tennant era Modern Who, you know, don't blink and you're dead.
Yeah. It's
but anyways, so here's your spoiler warning for Mask of the Phantasm, which is a 33-year-old animated movie. So it opens up. Well, so let's keep with the theme of the mob deaths, because for the most part, they all do something to do themselves in.
Yeah.
Because we have the first one where he's being chased, where the first mob boss is being chased by the Phantasm, and he's in a parking garage, and he's about, he's about to get away, but then he looks back, sees the Phantasm on the ground, and gets this smile on his face. He's like, I'm
gonna run this motherfucker down, kind of thing. And it's just like, that does not work out too well.
And the Phantasm dodges out of the way, and he goes out, off the floor of the
multi-story car park and
into the window of another building. And because this isn't a Fast and the Furious movie, it's lethal.
It's and of course the other big thing that obviously you're going to see with the plot of this movie as well is the first person obviously who's seen on the scene who is Batman, and of course everyone thinks it's now Batman has finally crossed the line. It's Batman who's killing these mobsters.
Well, and also the Phantasm has a very similar silhouette to Batman.
Yeah. Well, all these mobsters initially they think it's Batman when Batman turns up, and then it's something this thing, and then this figure comes out and it says, "Your angel of death is here, has come for you." You know.
Yeah. Yes. Your angel of death awaits.
Mm.
And then, the second is, visiting the grave of the first. And graveyards are actually another. The graveyard is a very big tying in location for this movie because, one of the big themes is how the main characters, because we have Batman and the Phantasm being shown as two sides of of one different coin. And the death, the death of their parents is their driving motivation. And as Alfred puts it in the, at the end, Batman walks the line between, walks the razor's edge of falling into vengeance.
Yeah.
The Phantasm had fallen into that pit years ago. Though he doesn't say the Phantasm because this is the end of the movie and the Phantasm had been unmasked at that point.
Yeah.
And arguably, Bosco's death, when he visits the graveyard, you could say that wasn't technically, where he, like all the other ones had something they did immediately beforehand to contribute to it. The first mob boss decides to try and, run over the Phantasm and, crashes his car. Salvatore decides to
make thinks it's a good idea to make a deal with someone who we'll talk about in a bit.
Yeah. Basically makes a deal with the devil and it doesn't work out for him.
Yeah.
But with Bosco, you get the sense that he's being herded, herded towards his fate.
And this thing, as I said, takes into a graveyard, and he's chased through the graveyard by the Phantasm.
And he falls into an empty grave.
Yeah. And then this is just the fact that you kind of see the last thing he sees is the monument above him, which looks like, especially in that sort of dark light, because it's a silhouette, it looks like the angel of death, and it's been pushed over and falling on top of it, and that's it.
Yeah,
I mean, that's quite whoa,
Yeah, and once again, and the modern, more mature movies can actually take a big lesson from Disney and other animated features, or at least other animated family features, about how how saying less is sometimes saying more.
Yeah.
Because we see the angel statue, tipping over, and then we see the angel statue toppled into the grave. We don't see anything other than that. We don't see the actual death. Now, in a R-rated movie, we would have seen the mangled corpse. But, you know, you don't really need to see that to get the impact. You know, and in fact, you know, sometimes, you know, seeing the thing on screen takes away from the impact of the implication.
Like I said, it's what's implied a lot of the time.
Yeah.
In this, that you don't necessarily see it. It's implied, but it's definitely implied that is murder has happened here.
Yeah.
And it definitely does this a bit through the series as well. We talked on earlier. And in a way, I think, it does actually kind of make it a little darker at times. And especially, as I said, you don't actually like with the one that's the other big death that's coming up with Sal.
Yeah,
you don't actually see the actual death, but what you see is way more fucking powerful.
Yeah, and once again, I'll make the parallel to a Disney movie that came around, it came out around the same time, to The Lion King, where we see like the deaths in The Lion King, we don't see the actual death, but we see enough to get, how dark it is.
Yeah. Can you hold for? I need to take some painkillers badly. I'll be back in like 2 minutes, I promise.
Okay. So, I'm probably going to go into more detail when we discuss The Lion King. But so, first mob boss, crashes his car. Bosco is crushed by a statue in an open grave. And Sal is the first one to put everything together. Well, not everything, but because he thinks that it's Batman who's doing this. He's the first to get, he's the first to put together that there was a hit list going on. That him, Bosco, and the first mobster were all together in, for a business venture back in the day, and everyone so far is getting knocked off. So he goes to the councilman who had, to a city councilman who is shown earlier in the movie as having, denouncing Batman because, the press believes it's Batman. Everyone believes that it's Batman doing this because Batman was breaking up that mob meeting. And when he finally catches up to the first mob boss, the mob boss is already dead, and he stops to investigate because he's Batman. He's the world's greatest detective. And so witnesses see Batman looking over the car wreck and turning away to, do the Batman thing. So the councilman is trying to get the police to, go after Batman, but Commissioner Gordon's going to bat for him, as Commissioner Gordon does, because they're very staunch allies in this depiction, as they are in most depictions. And Batman the Animated Series is very much like a condensed depiction of what makes Batman, which is why so many of what they introduced or changed had filtered out into the comics and then wider media, like how we said earlier, Harley Quinn. Oh, that was a terrible one. But Harley Quinn was invented for Batman the Animated Series. Mr. Freeze's tragic origin and kind of anti-villain status was invented for Batman the Animated Series. And I'm going to get into this when I get around to Batman on my released or on my pre-recorded video going through Apologia's Atheist list, because everyone who voted essentially voted that yes, I should both rework that video and do a mini series going through the list. So when I get to Batman, I'm going to get to this fact that I don't like modern Batman. For the most part, I feel like modern Batman has kind of missed the point of Batman and just made him into an angry trauma baby. I haven't seen Robert Pattinson's The Batman, and I've heard good things about it, and I've heard about how it's countering, it's responding to that depiction of Batman. But it feels like modern Batman depictions took the good stuff from the villains of Batman the Animated Series, but forgot what makes the core of Batman, and instead lifted their depiction of Batman from the satirical depictions we saw in The Dark Knight Returns and The Killing Joke. And so we have...
Or even the 60s, or even the 60s TV series, which was a satire in a different sense, But
well, what I feel like, modern depictions of Batman, with the possible exception of the, Pattinson, because I've heard things about how that's a response to this, but have basically uncritically lifted from the Miller Moore grumpy, angry trauma baby Batman and ran with it uncritically. And, forgetting or not even realizing that was a satire.
Yeah.
But now that you're back, we'll move on to we'll move on to Sal. So Sal goes and sees the councilman, who we learn has some connection to the Beaumont family.
Yes,
or had connection to the Beaumont family back in the day, and
the councilman is also the one leading the charge against Batman in public as well. So.
And he's like, "Hey, you guys gotta crack down, and you gotta take out the Batman. The Batman snapped, and he's killing us."
Yeah,
and the councilman brushes them off. So Sal goes to make his deal. He goes to make his deal with the devil. Yeah. Wow, that was actually a pretty good Mark Hamill.
That wasn't bad. That wasn't bad, actually.
Yeah.
And I gotta say this. I just gotta say, because I'd almost forgotten how much I enjoyed. When people talk about like the iconic depictions of the Joker, do not leave Mark Hamill out of the equation. Mark Hamill's Joker is breathtaking.
And once again, Mark Hamill technically counts as a cinematic Joker because Mask of the Phantasm had a cinematic release.
Yep.
And in terms of Mark Hamill's depiction of the Joker, he's, I feel that he's kind of the perfect synthesis of all the variations of the Joker that we've had. Like, Cesar Romero was the silly 50s gimmick Joker. Jack Nicholson was our gangster Joker. And then, Heath Ledger was the mad, chaos agent Joker. And Mark Hamill is largely a good balance of all the three. It doesn't lean too much into one Joker archetype.
Okay, Ring, I know normally you're not up for sharing clips, but this is looks from a small YouTuber who looks like he filmed this at a Comic-Con. Mark Hamill delivering a eulogy from Batman the animated series at a Comic-Con. I don't know if you can share. Hold on, let me just let me share my screen a second. I want to give people an idea of Mark Hamill as the Joker.
Yeah.
Basically. So now to give some context to this, this is from an episode where he thinks someone like a complete criminal nobody has killed Batman, kind of robbing him of his chance of greatness. Yeah. And this particular criminal, now the Joker, is going to put him to death. And it's kind of the scene. It's like a funeral scene going on here, where the Joker's killing this guy. But let's watch Mark Hamill here.
Dear friends, today is the day the clown cried. But he cried not for the passing of one man, but for the death of a dream. The dream that one day he would taste victory over his hated enemy, because it was the Batman that made me the happy soul I am today. How I agonized over how to thank him for that, perhaps with a cyanide pie in the face.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't want to get, I don't want
to. I'll get rid of that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to give people an idea of Mark Hamill's Joker.
And of course, so Sal goes and sees the Joker and offers him $5 million up front, and then whatever he wants, once the job is done, to kill the Batman, because he's convinced that Batman's offing them. And
we get a tiny little bit of Joker's past, at least in this particular series, but it's not alluded to too heavily.
Yeah. Basically, what we learn is Joker was, a pre-clownified Joker, was the mob hitman that knocked off Andrea's father.
Yeah.
And once again, we get a gag that comes up a lot in the Paul Dini, in the Timverse depiction of the Joker, where he's subverting, where he's basically aping 50s, house life tropes.
Yes.
And, thus satirizing and subverting them, because, it's the Joker who's doing it.
I should say that there's a plot. It's almost a little sub thing here that it goes back to when Batman was dating Andrea, like one of the places they went on one of their dates was like Gotham was holding like the World's Fair.
Yeah, and
of course now this is like years later. What's left of all the World's Fair exhibits is as what tends to happen to most of these World's Fair kind of type things. That they're just derelict ghost town things now, and that's where Joker's hiding out.
Well, and I'm glad you brought that up, because I feel like the Gotham World's Fair location. Well, it is a centerpiece location of this narrative, because when we see in the flashback, it's it's representative of Bruce's hopes for a happy life. You know, everything looks bright and cheery. And then in the modern day, it's worn down, decrepit, it's a ruin, and the Joker's set up shop in there. And it feels like a really good metaphor for, you know, for the state of Bruce's mind.
Bruce and Andrea's to an extent as well.
Is, you know, everything is dark and worn down and in shambles, and the Joker looms large. In fact, we get another great visual metaphor for this later in the movie, where Batman and the Joker are fighting in the model of Gotham, and it looks like a kaiju fight.
Yeah, it looks like a Godzilla movie, totally. And then and of course, when like the Joker sets these little model airplanes, that there's a little nod to King Kong in there as well.
Yeah.
When he sets these little model airplanes on Batman, he's in his like it's so you know he kind of looks like it kind of looks a bit like Godzilla versus King Kong for a moment there. Then the planes, you know, you got the whole visual there of King Kong in a sense with the planes,
and you know, the World's Fair, the Gotham of the future is, you know, is where everything comes to a head in the climax, and it's, you know, destroyed by the Joker. And, you know, just, you know, all the hope for the future is, you know, has been destroyed, and it ends with Bruce Wayne continuing to be Batman, believing for a few moments that Andrea had died in the explosion. And we see, you know, but he finds the locket, so he learns, he knows that she's out there somewhere. And when we see her, she's, you know, on a cruise ship wearing a veil. And confirming that she is alone.
Yeah.
So, you know,
I mean, Andrea as a character, I thought in this particular was I mean, obviously, you know, hey, look, I think people haven't covered it already. The spoiler: she's the Phantasm.
Yeah.
If people haven't gathered this already, but
you know,
she's almost a little bit in a certain ways. There's little elements of the kind of like femme fatale in these sort of like noir.
Yeah,
movies.
She's very much the archetypical apparent damsel femme fatale.
Yeah.
You know, where you've got two different kinds of femme fatale when it comes to noir. You have the oozing sex appeal femme fatale. And then you have the femme fatale that looks like a damsel in distress, but is really the mastermind.
Yeah. That's Andrea.
Yeah, and Andrea is very much the former, where she uses her apparent helpless femininity as another mask, while, you know, and which once again brings up that the Phantasm is really the foil to Batman in this movie, even though the Joker is there. The Joker is very much a side character in this piece, which is very rare for a Batman movie that features the Joker.
Even though this is what I mean, you feel for a little while at the end of this movie it is coming down to your traditional Batman versus the Joker kind of thing, and then obviously Phantasm she comes back into it at the end and disappears with the Joker, whilst the Joker is just laughing.
Yeah.
And okay, you don't really see it in this film, but obviously you kind of find out later. Of course, the Joker isn't getting killed off by Phantasm, but it's almost, I think, it's one of those things with the Joker. And it's really weird, especially with Mark Hamill in the dialogue in this film. For a moment, like when Batman's trying to bring him down, like Joker's almost acting like he's afraid or whatever of dying or whatever. And then you got this whole thing with Andrea. It's like he just starts laughing, knowing that the bomb's about to go off and kill them all, and he's just laughing about this. And it's like, and of course you kind of find out obviously Andrea spares him because what can you do to this guy? This is the thing. The Joker is so messed up.
Well,
what can you do to him?
No, so
he doesn't care if you kill him. You know?
So actually, I have a theory about why he's freaked out about Batman. You know, about Batman taking him. You know, keeping him in the blowing up. You know, in the exhibit when it's about to blow up, and laughing when Andrea does. Because, and it goes back to what he says when Sal visits. You know, Sal visits and says the Batman's knocking us off, and he's like, "Oh, I finally gotten him to snap."
Yeah, that's the Joker's goal. If anything, that's his ultimate goal, isn't it? To push.
It's not that he's, you know, it's not that he's afraid of dying. You know, he's afraid of dying without completing his goal. He hasn't, you know, he hasn't broken Batman, but when Andrea gets him, he sees that he had broken her.
Yeah.
And
that's that's hilarious to him. That's like, oh.
Well, and also, you know, Andrea calls Batman my love. You know, he hears Andrea call Batman my love.
And you know, you got to be, if you're the Joker, you got to be reveling in that as well.
And to quote one of the best Joker lines from the episode, almost got him. There's more than one way to get someone. So,
yeah, that's a great episode. If anyone wants to watch it, yes, almost got him. Got to watch that episode.
Yeah, but it's very much, you know, the Joker's laughing at the climax because the Joker he realizes that he may not have gotten Batman to snap, but he got Batman's babe to snap. And that, you know, and that's, you know, the greatest joke he'd heard up to that point.
Yeah.
He realizes that in a way he had won. And that's when he starts laughing, and, you know, Phantasm, you know, does her fog trick and they disappear.
And the thing is, obviously, you know, this is stuff you obviously find out later that Andrea actually spares the Joker. Because, I mean, like, it's just like, what can I do to this guy? You know, I can't kill him. You know, he's completely. But in this movie, it's kind of left ambivalent as to what happens. You don't see what happens with the Joker. It's only like later you find out.
Yeah.
I mean, you kind of know in a way they're not really killing the Joker off, but you know.
And I'll be right back.
No worries. All right. Yeah. Hey, Jenny. Good to see you. So, Yeah, I suppose it's one of the things in anything to do with Batman. You can't. It's like the Batman and the Batman and Joker are like you kind of got to have the Joker as that foil to Batman in a way. But this, I'm kind of lost to something to say now. This Andrea Beaumont Phantasm is it's an interesting character because also this is there's a scene in this movie that I've got to talk about. I'll hopefully bring away on this when they're back. But I was about to weigh on a little scene talking about Andrea's character, which I think says an awful lot. It's when Batman confronts her in the apartment.
Yeah.
And this is playing into the kind of she's being on the surface the tough femme fatale kind of and it's he has that conversation and she just drops a hint, hey, if anyone's ruled by their parents, it's you. And it's just like straight away like, hey, I know who the fuck you are, Bruce, I know this is you.
Well, because she saw him pausing by the Wayne gravestone.
So she puts two and two together there, and knowing, okay, and sort of the way she delivers that line, like, hey, I know who you are, or whatever, and it's tough. And then as soon as Batman leaves the room, she just breaks down in tears because it's like because it was also like I said, they were a reflection of one another because Andrea, she'd put her hopes in Bruce to be, at one time that was going to be, they were going to get married and have this happy life together.
Yeah,
it didn't happen.
Yeah, because with Bruce, it's based. He had turned his trauma into steely resolve to help people. To make sure that what happened to him doesn't happen to anyone else, or to try. But Andrea, blames.
It's pure revenge for Andrea.
It's revenge for not only the death of her father, but for what she sees as the destruction of her life.
Yeah.
It's because of the mob that she didn't get to marry Bruce Wayne. It's because of the mob that she had to live in hiding in Europe, going from location to location. And it's because, and then when the mob took, her father from her, that was all she had left. But so let's go back to Salvatore meeting the Joker.
Yeah.
So, he discusses his, hey, I don't have any other choice. The only one who can take down Batman is you. 5 million up front, whatever you want at the end, just make sure that Batman's dead. Because he believes that Batman is, killing off the mobsters.
Yeah.
And, Joker has his fun. And then, says he'll take the job, and, Salvatore gives a little smirk of relief.
No one's gonna hurt. I can't do the Mark Hamill thing. No one's going to hurt my pal Sal.
Yeah. No one's going to hurt my pal Sal. There. That's what I wanted to see. A nice big smile.
I think you do it better than me.
But anyways, and you know, and it cuts. You know, the scene ends with a close up of the Joker, you know, laughing and approaching, and then it cuts to, you know, Salvatore's estate.
Well, it's just let's put it this way: someone is going to hurt Sal. It's just it's kind of the it's all right. It's kind of it's okay, Sal. Nobody's gonna fuck with you but me.
Yeah. Sal is basically gone rigor mortis and had been killed by the Joker venom, which of course anyone who knows about the Joker knows that the Joker venom makes you laugh yourself to death and leaves a big grin on your face post-mortem.
Yeah.
And not only that, but he had been left as bait for Batman. And that's when Joker realizes that it's not Batman who's going after everyone. Because,
joke's on me!
And so Sal, the explosives hidden around Sal's person go off, and the Phantasm escapes because the movie's still going. And the Joker goes and visits our councilman, where we learn that we have already gotten the impression that he's mixed up in this somehow, because Sal had visited him before. And the Joker shows up and starts it, figures, it's the councilman that's doing this.
He figures it's this councilman who is like, that he's got some mob ties. Yeah. He's cleaning up loose ends, is what the Joker's thinking here.
Oh, what a photo op! The councilman and his goofy pal,
and his wacky pal.
Yeah. And
I think this is going to be like a little competition here, who can do the best Mark Hamill Joker between you and I. I think you're winning.
Oh, it's so amusing that you think that there's any kind of a competition to it. Sorry.
No, I'm lost. I can't think of a line to come back with.
But, that wasn't even a line. I was just speaking off the cuff. Joke's on you.
Well, that's a coinky dink.
Okay, I think that's.
No, I think let's stop it. It's fucking. Yeah. Mark, let's put it this way: Mark Hamill is never going to sign an autograph for either one of us now.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man, I wonder, it's like if one of us should clip that and just tweet it to Mark Hamill, see how he reacts.
Yeah, let's do. He probably would. There's a good chance he would react to it as well, actually.
Yeah. But anyways, back to the matter at hand, because we've actually gone over the runtime.
Quite considerably, actually.
But yeah. Well, no, only about by 10 minutes. So 10 minutes. If you discount,
it's a short movie, guys. Well, it is a short movie,
as is the tendency for non-Disney animated pictures of the time.
Yeah.
Because because animated media is so juvenilized, a lot of animated features are very much on the shorter side because, kids don't have that long of an attention span. So, we should, we keep kids movies under, under 2 hours. I'd actually have to give it to the Joker.
I was just going to say, I was going to reply to Jenny, Joker's going to fuck Chewie up badly.
Yeah. It's
not okay. Chewie's got the brute strength thing going for him, but Joker would fuck him up.
Yeah, especially if we're talking, Mark Hamill Joker. Mark Hamill Joker is a slippery son of a bitch. In fact, especially talk, when you're like to pull from the Batman Superman movie, Superman. Neurodivergent kids who could watch 3 hour movies every day for months, raise your hands. But yeah, well, that's the thing is, animation is juvenilized, and we have this cultural attitude in regards to kids being dumber and, with a lesser attention span. Okay. I'm sorry. I have to finish this.
He has a laser crossbow for a start.
Well, but so in regards to the Batman Superman movie, because this same Joker, we're talking Mark Hamill, Tim versus Joker. Joker shows up in Metropolis, says, "Hey, pay me $1 million and I'll kill Superman." And he actually does get the upper hand on Superman. Because, he had gotten his hands on some kryptonite, but Superman knew that. So he shows up in a lead-lined suit. And of course, "Oh, right, I forgot. The acid." And does the whole acid flower trick spray. Joker's got a trick, Joker's got tricks up his sleeve, and unless he throws the fight for a punchline, he's gonna come out on top fighting against someone who's big, dumb, and strong.
Yeah.
Or in another, Superman has laser vision. Joker can outmaneuver Superman. If Joker
basically, if you can outmaneuver Superman and fuck Superman up, yeah, you can fuck up any character in the Star Wars universe, with the possible exception of Palpatine, I'll say. But
I was going to say, with the possible exception of Mark Hamill, of Luke Skywalker.
See, that's the matchup you want to be putting, Jenny.
Yeah.
Luke Skywalker versus the Joker, who wins? Easy, Mark Hamill.
Yeah, Mark. Speaking of famous Mark Hamill clips, there's a famous comm clip of Mark Hamill off the cuff doing the "I am your father" scene, but it's Joker and Luke.
Oh, I've got to watch that after we finish this stream.
There's also a Justice League Unlimited short where the Joker and the Trickster kidnap Mark Hamill, and Mark Hamill voices every single character in that short.
Yeah. This is going to be. I feel like this stream's turning into a big love fest for Mark Hamill here. But
yeah, Mark Hamill appreciation stream.
It really is. But this is the thing. If you watch even the clips they filmed of Mark Hamill delivering his lines when he's doing these voiceover roles, like the Joker, he's not just standing there reading the lines. He's kind of there, like, doing the body language and everything with it. He's really into the role.
Yeah, Mark Hamill. Mark Hamill is the Joker in this film. He does the voice of the Joker for Batman the Animated Series, and thus he did the Joker for
a lot of
Mask. Yeah, for actually, I think
he's done in a load of video games.
Yeah, I think he's the one actor who's reprised the role of the Joker the most. He just hasn't done it live action. But I will say, if you want a good example of what a live action Mark Hamill Joker would look like, watch the Flash episodes where he reprises his role as the Trickster.
Yeah,
it very much has a Batman the Animated Series Joker energy to it.
I'll just say as well, just to finish off the Mark Hamill love fest. In that new Kevin Smith, like He-Man Masters of the Universe, like the He-Man thing, Mark Hamill's Skeletor was fucking awesome. Yeah. It was the one redeeming thing about that series.
But okay, so Joker thinks that it's the councilman that's doing it.
Yeah.
And then Andrea Beaumont calls. And he puts it all together.
That's a coincidence. Which is an actual line, I'm sorry.
Yeah. We're talking about her father, and the spawn of his loins just happens to call.
Yeah.
But that's when that's when the Joker puts it together.
He's putting it together. He thinks it's the council. And now, I should say as well, Batman at this point does not realize that Andrea's father's dead, and he actually thinks Andrea's father is still alive and is the Phantasm.
Yeah.
And like, had sort of said this thing to Andrea, hey, listen, this is gonna come down to me and your father at some point. You know that, so even I think it's one of those things. I'd imagine most of the audience watching this have probably put this together more quickly than certainly Batman did. But
to be fair,
the Joker's the guy who puts it together before anyone.
Well, to be fair, the Joker had all the information needed to put it together before Batman did. Batman's working from a blank slate, and Joker was involved with the whole affair back in the day.
Yeah.
And of course, so he gives the councilman a dose of the Joker toxin, and we have a scene where Batman interrogates the councilman, and we learn that he had sold Andrea's father. He had sold Mr. Beaumont out to the mob.
And this is a great scene as well. Like this is actually really quite. It's great. It's also somewhat disturbing in a way.
Yeah.
Where they're trying to give this councilman the sedatives because he's laughing hysterically and he can't stop himself because of this toxin that the Joker toxin, and they're trying to, and they sort of briefly get him stabilized. Then Batman comes in to interrogate him and puts him under more stress, and he
starts making him laugh again.
Just sets him off on this uncontrollable laughter again, and again, spoiler alert, it turns out he does survive this, but he's driven mad by the toxin and
honestly, like the Joker toxin is probably one of the most disturbing things in animated DC, just because of how it affects you.
The idea that you get this and you just laugh yourself to death.
Yeah. And and everything elicits a laughter response. But
I'll say it's the only way I'd ever make it as a comedian.
We have gone over the climax scene and how it's and how it's thematically representative, and it's, you know, and it is one of the more cinematic scenes in this movie, because once again, this movie is very much just Batman the animated series, but as a feature film, and a lot of the animation is just that same, style and quality. It's not really animated for the cinema, but to be fair, Disney at this point, Disney is only just beginning to animate with an eye to how it looks on the big screen. Because I mean, we do get a couple shots that we had a couple shots in Beauty and the Beast that were like, okay, that was obviously animated with the idea of how it'll look on the big screen in mind. And we get a little more, in Aladdin but when it comes to, animating specifically for the big screen, we don't really get that from Disney until The Lion King.
But to give you a little the idea of the kind of budget Disney was throwing at animated films compared to this. Where am I looking at? Okay, the Little Mermaid, which is probably the film that probably kicked off the Disney Renaissance.
Yes, it is.
Had a budget of $40 million and it got a $235 million return. This is obviously box office, so like cinema, obviously. This movie had a $6 million budget, and as I said, and this is obviously cinema returns, $5.6 million. So like I said, this movie made its money on like DVD, like home video release.
Like the Mask of the Phantasm, like many others, many non-Disney releases of the 90s, had a minimal impact in the cinema and then essentially became cult favorites as it was rediscovered on DVD. The same happened for the Iron Giant. I'd say the only other studio release that didn't have this fate, that actually was a box office smash, was The Prince of Egypt, but that was because The Prince of Egypt was specifically manufactured to be a Disney killer. But yeah, for example, so Mask of the Phantasm was released between Aladdin and The Lion King. Aladdin had a budget of $28 million. The Lion King had a budget of $45 million.
Yeah. You see the difference, though, of what Disney is pumping into animated films. And okay, you can understand it on a certain level that, like, Warner Brothers hadn't really been doing animation. Warner Brothers at this point had not really been doing much in the way of animation, other than this series and the Tiny Toons, but it was what they were doing at the time that this was released.
Warner
really
Brothers was very much
more focused since the Looney Tunes days. Really, they hadn't really been doing anything.
Warner Brothers was at this point in time. Warner Brothers was more focused on shorts and television, and animating for shorts and television, and animating for a feature length for a feature length movie is very much a different beast.
So I'm gonna say the one thing in this movie that feels totally out of place is the very first thing. It's the Warner Brothers credits where Bugs Bunny pops up on the stage. It's the logo. That's the one thing that is completely out of place in this whole. But you see, this is what Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers really. They hadn't really been doing like the animated stuff for a while now. Not really since this cartoon, the Tiny Toons Adventures, which was the other thing they were doing at the time.
Yeah. And like they don't really like the next animated feature that had any kind of impact for better or for worse that Warner Brothers came out with would probably be Quest for Camelot, which didn't come out until like 97, 98.
I don't think I've ever seen that actually, but
I mean, it's a product of its time, and it very much falls into the "we have Disney at home" category.
Yeah. Okay.
Eric Idle's voices one half of a two-headed dragon.
Well, Eric Idle always helps. Yeah. So Eric Idle always tends to be a plus for a movie.
But it's we have Disney at home take on Arthurian-ish legend.
Yeah.
But we're not discussing Quest for Camelot. We're discussing. Well, I mean, in a way we are, but we're that's not the lens we're using. But largely, Mask of the and so you could probably say that with the example of with the exception of the opening credits and the big climax at the end, this movie isn't really animated for cinema. Though at the point, neither was Disney. Neither were Disney films. But why I think this movie got such a resurgence is, it's what encapsulates Batman the Animated Series as well is the scripting. They know what they're saying. They constructed their script and their plot and their animation to convey that. I think the best example of this is in the flashback scene where Bruce Wayne's at the grave of the Waynes, at the grave of his parents, agonizing over his decision. Like, do I stay with my vow to be Batman, or do I get married to Andrea and live a happy life?
Yeah, and he's that is. And you got the whole thing that you got this in the animation. This is a guy agonizing over this decision, and it wasn't even necessarily Batman at the time. It was just that he made obviously some vow to fight crime. Because I did see that this one a little flash, like nods to Batman Year One. You got a little flashback of his first excursion out fighting crime, and he's just kind of a man in a balaclava kind of thing, and.
Yeah, but
they don't really take him seriously. The criminals don't take him seriously at first. And it's when he realizes he's got to do something to try to strike terror into the hearts of.
Yeah. To quote him, everything was everything went according to plan except one thing. I need to strike fear into them from the beginning.
Yeah.
And then we have, and then we have him agonizing over his choice and what, what he would, or whether he will continue, and if he can, how will he strike fear into the hearts of criminals? When Andrea breaks up with him because of the mob business, which we learn later, and we get the shot of him putting on the mask for the first time. And
and the way Alfred's like, my God,
yeah,
it's like even Alfred's afraid at that point. The first time he's seeing Batman,
and I'd say that like the scene of him, of Bruce Wayne putting on the mask for the first time, and you get the famous look at the Batman scowl for the first time, and you see Alfred's reaction. That's probably the best animated scene of this movie. And partially because they lean into a technique that for animation that I like to call strategic stylization, where all animation is already has its own style. Some of it's samey, some of it's unique, but strategic stylization is where, for particularly emotional or plot important scenes, the movie will then lean into the stylization to drive the point home. And when during that scene, everything gets more silhouetted, it gets more noir. You see the shadows lengthen, and it leans more into the stylization, the stylized aspect of Batman the Animated Series, while for the most part, it's kind of pulled back a bit. And once again, we're going to see this come up later discussions this month, because this is something that Disney really starts polishing and honing during the Disney Renaissance. We see a little bit of strategic stylization early on. I'd say Poor Unfortunate Souls in The Little Mermaid is a good example of Disney's early attempts, where they're lean harder into their style to drive the point home. But the first movie where we see a lot more hints of it is, we get a lot more of it in Aladdin, because every time the genie pops in, it becomes crazier and wilder.
Yeah.
The colors become a little more vibrant as the genie interacts with the plot. But we really see it for the first time, like, completely infuse the movie once again in The Lion King. So, I mean, you can't really say that Disney took notes from Warner Brothers from Mask, because
not so.
Well, because because these were in production at the same time. But that being said, in this era where we're also seeing animation, begin to get more critically acclaimed, critical acclamation. Like, for instance, I think Heart of Ice had already won its Emmy for best daytime episode. And Beauty and the Beast had already gotten all of its Oscar awards. So, like, the heavy lifting had already been kind of done to make animation seen as something more of an art form and less of just something to keep the kiddies entertained. And so animated studios are now, we're at this point are now beginning to lean into the more artistic expression, which will reach its zenith later on in this era with movies like Emperor's New Groove. That's post-Renaissance. But it reaches its zenith in the post-Renaissance, and then immediately gets killed when Shrek is released and basically demolishes cinematic 2D animation. And we only really see strategic stylization coming back into the discussion with this new modern Sony-led era, where we have it coming to the fore and Into the Spider-Verse. It was used and Sony's follow-up movie, The Mitchells versus the Machines, and I haven't seen these movies, but I can tell from the trailers that other studios are leaning into it as well. But Disney leaned into it Pixar leaned into it with Turning Red. It's leaned into as well with Encanto, but it's a lot more subtle because they're drawing from the old Disney well, so it has a more Disney Renaissance feel to it. And then DreamWorks is also doing it with their The Bad Guys and their Puss in Boots film. And once again, I haven't seen those two yet, but you can tell from the trailers that they're developing their own 3D styles and then leaning into the technique of strategic stylization.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I was kind of lost sort of because I was trying to read something at the same time, Rain. Yeah. I apologize.
No, it's all right. I
guess I don't get really summing up on this film actually, but this is a bit of a hidden gem because I think in a way, even though it's gone on and had this life, it's still a little bit of a hidden gem. This movie. That it's obviously it's taken on this life of its own. But yeah, I mean, obviously, compared to what Disney was doing, I don't think you can really compare it too much. But
like I said, it's very much Batman the Animated Series, the movie. So animation quality wise, it harkens more to what you saw coming out of Warner Brothers Animation Studios for TV. And once again, basically my point was what Batman the Animated Series was doing for TV in terms of strategic stylization, which you saw a bit of in this movie, Disney was beginning to do so at the same time for their cinematic stuff.
Yeah. No, I don't disagree with that. I don't disagree with that at all.
And once again, it's a technique that got polished and reached its zenith at the end of the Disney Renaissance era, only to have all that hard work obliterated when Shrek came on the scene and basically killed 2D animation.
Yeah, this Shrek was definitely a game changer, without a doubt. I said I'm not the best, and I'm not much help. I'm not the best critic of animation. I'm really not. This is kind of where's Bionic Dance when I need her kind of thing. This is if you're asking me to comment on animation, this is kind of where's Kate when I need her kind of thing.
Yeah, I'm very much like I can't talk about animation from a creator's perspective. I'm very much just an enthusiastic consumer.
I mean that's about as best as I can say, but I don't necessarily, I don't think I as a person always have the greatest appreciation of taking like art on comic book pages or something to actual screen. I don't know that I necessarily have always the greatest appreciation for that, and maybe it's something I should try to appreciate a bit more. But even I can somewhat appreciate the aesthetics of this movie. I mean, like I said, because I just love the whole like the noir feel of
the gothic noir.
Yeah, that's just that as a backdrop to this whole thing. The feeling is just fantastic for this. So,
but I think we've basically talked through.
Yeah.
So the TLDR is, Batman Mask of the Phantasm is a hidden gem that you should check out, but it is also very emblematic of what other studios were doing during this time animation wise, because it's not really that much. There's not really that much to say about it animation wise, and it's very much just Batman the Animated Series, the movie. It's very emblematic of animated show, the movie, and of course the other two categories of non-Disney, of animated films that were coming from studios that were not Disney were, whatever the hell, what's his name? Whatever the hell Don Bluth was smoking that year.
Yeah. Sorry, you mentioned at the beginning,
Yeah, whatever the hell Don Bluth was smoking that year. So, Rockadoodle, All Dogs Go to Heaven, etc. Animated TV show, the movie, and we have Disney at home with a little sprinkling of the obligatory animated PSA, obligatory feature-length animated PSA, but those also fall into different, the previous, in any of the previous categories. Like, say, Fern Gully is animated PSA, but it's also we have Disney at home.
I do remember Fern Gully being hyped quite a lot at the time, and then nobody giving a shit about it when I was.
With all posthumous. To be
honest, I've never watched it, but I just remember this was one of those films being hyped to hell, and nobody giving a shit about it.
Well, yeah, I never watched it either, but that was because it was pagan and demonic.
Okay, I mean maybe it's a great film. I don't know.
Yeah,
I haven't watched it.
With all posthumous apologies to Robin Williams, please don't send your ghost to haunt me, because actually Robin Williams famously didn't want to be marketed as the genie for Aladdin, because he didn't want Aladdin to overshadow Fern Gully. Because he believed in the whole save the world,
the message.
The save the rainforest message. But from what clips I've seen and what I know of the plot, Ferngully is very much, we have Disney at home with a PSA attached.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't watched it, so
you could even say the Page Master is like the Page Master is a bit of, we have Disney at home, but I'd say that's probably the most unique movie that I'm aware of to come from a non-Disney, animated movie that I'm aware of to come from a non-Disney studio. In fact, it was it was almost it was actually it was almost in the running to be the film we discussed this week, but then Kevin Conroy died, and I was like, it's my channel, I'll
R.I.P. R.I.P. Kevin Conroy, obviously, voice of the Batman. I should say, this little side trivia kind of thing about this movie, in a way, in terms of its actual promotional stuff that happens. This movie got a little bit of limited thing for a couple of weeks. That Batman Mask of Phantasm toys were included in McDonald's Happy Meals for about a couple of weeks. And Kenner did a toy line, which they released before this movie, which blew the fucking plot. Because they did an action figure of Phantasm before this thing, and you could unmask Phantasm.
Oh no!
And you saw that it was so they kind of fucked the plot up a little bit here. Kenner spoiled, they kind of gave that's the ultimate spoiler, that one, isn't it? Really, but this is the thing, obviously, that with the promotional stuff going on at the time. Now I can't remember which movie it was. When McDonald's were doing, obviously, their Happy Meal promotions or whatever, that they were doing a lot of things with. Now I can't remember which film it was they fell out with Disney over.
Yeah.
It was one film that Disney released that they didn't do as well. McDonald's lost their ass on Happy Meal toys and cut ties. Let's just put it this way: Burger King cashed in like fuck on the Lion King.
I was pretty sure that McDonald's still had Lion King stuff.
I don't think they did. Burger King signed like an exclusive thing for their kids' meal kind of stuff to be Disney's, and let's just put it that way. So it kind of played into the fast food wars a little bit as well. What was going on at the time?
Okay,
maybe McDonald's did towards the end because they kind of realized, the Lion King was going to be a fucking big cash cow, but
so hold on.
Oh, Noodle says McDonald's Kiara soft toy. So maybe McDonald's did get in on at the end of it all.
Because and Mulan had the Szechuan sauce.
Yeah. I'm going to go look this stuff up again, but I know there was a period during this Disney Renaissance where, like, Burger King gained massive grounds of McDonald's and this fast food war that was going on at the time over, like, Kids Club versus Happy Meal stuff.
Yeah. Okay, so okay. Okay. So Disney and McDonald's partnered in 96, 97.
Yeah.
So films including Monsters, Inc., The Incredibles, Toy Story 2, Mulan, The Emperor's New Groove, Finding Nemo, Cars, and Lilo and Stitch.
So yeah, there was maybe
and then of course there was the Mulan Szechuan sauce that had a resurgence of fame due to a certain Justin Roiland and Dan Harmon. Gotta get that sauce, Morty. That's my arc. Get the Szechuan sauce.
Okay. Have we got anything? I feel like we've told us about everything we can say about this movie now. But
so basically, to reiterate, Mask of the Phantasm is very much a, while it is a hidden gem, it is emblematic of. I feel it's emblematic of what other studios were doing, in during the time of the Disney Renaissance, and kind of there are artistic reasons why Disney kind of overshadowed everything in the Renaissance, aside from, yes, there is the fact that Disney was has been such a cultural monolith when it came to cinematic animation for decades at this point, because we had the classic era and then they kind of dropped off and then they came surging back in the Renaissance. But I'd say there is also an artistic angle for why other studios just didn't have as much of an impact, except, coming back years later with cult, where some of what they brought to theaters became cult classics, like, Mask of the Phantasm and The Iron Giant. And, once again, the only non-Disney animated feature to become a smash hit in the box office, during the Renaissance, was The Prince of Egypt. And I'd argue that was specifically manufactured to be a Disney killer.
That was supposed to be a middle finger to Disney, that one, I think. Fuck Disney.
I said it before in our Road to El Dorado stream. I'll do it again, and I'll say it again if we ever cover the Rise of DreamWorks. But I feel like you can read, there's very much a detailed plan to take down Disney when it comes to the release of the early DreamWorks films. Because you have Prince of Egypt, which is, we can do Disney better than you. And it's very much designed to be a Disney movie that kills Disney. Like, it is, if you watch The Prince of Egypt, it is a Disney Renaissance movie, except it's also a Bible epic. And it was specifically marketed to fundies. In fact, I remember back when Prince of Egypt was being released. So you know how when Black Panther was released, African American churches and community centers would buy up tickets so they could, take their kids to see that. Fundy churches did that for Prince of Egypt.
Okay. Yeah.
But then after that, you had Road to El Dorado, which was basically a stealth satire of Disney, of the Disney Renaissance. And then you have,
essentially, Prince of Egypt was meant to be the Disney killer, but ended up as God's Not Dead.
No,
sorry, I'm joking here. But...
No, yeah, because I think, and we're probably going to have to go into more detail on this in another stream, but I very much feel that marketing towards the Christian right was part of the Disney killer strategy, because at this point in time, the evangelical right had become to pull away from Disney. Basically, after Pocahontas, there is a string of, you can't watch this Disney film because it's demonic. Pocahontas,
bear in mind, we're still sort of we're at the tail end of the Satanic Panic here as well.
No, well,
I say at the tail end of it, if anything. But
I'm very much as someone who grew up fundagelical, I'm very much of the opinion that the Satanic Panic never ended. It just stopped being mainstream.
Oh yeah, I said the height of it. Perhaps that's a better way to have put it.
Because when it came to Disney movies, the evangelical right hated Pocahontas because, well, nature, New Age stuff. Because one, New Age stuff, and two, it wasn't historical. It's not a historical representation.
Well, that's a criticism. To be fair, that's a criticism. I'm sure if Noodle was on here as well, that's a criticism we probably agree with. But
well, they did it. The fun,
and I'm not saying their version of history is correct either. We're just saying Disney's version is wrong.
Yeah, they didn't like the Christian. They didn't like the fact that Disney didn't go with the Christian propaganda version.
Yeah.
And then, of course, Hunchback of Notre Dame makes the church look bad, and the gargoyles are demons. And then you have Hercules, where, it's pagan.
Yeah.
And then you have Mulan with the ghosts, the ancestor spirits. And basically look at how the fundies are, were reacting to Turning Red. Remove the My Panda, My Choice discussion, and that's basically how they reacted to Mulan. And so they were they were a ripe market for exploitation when DreamWorks came in with The Prince of Egypt.
I can imagine.
So, basically, Prince of Egypt was their Oscar bait Disney killer. And then they have Rota El Dorado, which is subtle satire. And then they have Spirit Stallion of the Cimarron, which is another Oscar bait movie. And a little bit of a subtle a subtle satire on the Western genre, because it's taking a Western movie and flipping it on its head, where the heroes are not the white invaders, but we'll get in. These are all movies that we could very much have its own discussion. And then later, and then right after Spirit Sailing of the Cimarron, they came in guns blazing with Shrek, which was their overt double middle finger satire of Disney.
Yeah. But Shrek was where it got good, though, because I enjoyed Shrek, but
yeah,
I didn't enjoy some of the. I do feel some of the sequels, I think.
Yeah,
Shrek was a big, I think, big middle finger to the whole, whole animated kind of film genre at the time, though, as well. So,
yeah, but that's the thing. Up until just recently, the history of cinematic animation is either Disney or reactions to Disney.
Yeah.
Up until the downfall of Disney, and we're up until the point of Shrek, satirizing animated fairy tale cinema is satirizing Disney. because it's either all Disney or Disney clones. And then we get into, another Disney dark age where everyone is just ripping on Disney. And now we're starting to enter another constructive phase. But interestingly enough, it's for the first time in American animated history, it's a constructive phase that's not being led by Disney. It's instead being led by Sony.
Ooh.
Yeah. Arguably they're still milking it because I think the Puss in Boots movie did big numbers of like the one that just came out did make big numbers at the box office. And honestly, I'm interested in watching that because that actually looks like it has.
There's a lot of spin-offs in Shrek as well. I mean, even in this at the that animated TV series, Father of the Pride, where they got Eddie Murphy's donkey to appear in that a couple of times. Like but like the thing with donkeys talking about his childhood, going, "They used to bully me at school and say donkey is an ass. Donkey is an ass."
Yeah, but so with that, do you have anything to shill, Scummer?
Not necessarily, but I probably. Well, I'm sure I'm going to have some things coming up. Obviously, especially now that myself and Ring's competition is back on, is who can get blocked by Pastor Greg Locke first. So,
and I don't know. I'm thinking my strategy has a pretty good chance of working.
Well, yeah, I think so. But I had to say, I had this reaction when you got blocked by David Silverman before me, and he still hasn't blocked me. Today is the day the clown cried. Not for the fact that one was blocked before me, but for the death of a dream.
Yeah.
The dream that he would someday taste the ultimate victory over his hated enemy.
Yeah. But
I digress. Well, that was fun. Who's up for Chinese?
Yeah. So
sorry, I had to do it.
Yeah. So ignore the channel punching bag in the corner, frantically taking notes on milking the cash cow in the corner.
Yeah. Okay. No. Serious plug-in. No. Yeah. I don't have anything necessarily planned coming up, but people know I'm kind of keeping an eye on the AAI story, which seems to be, just like it's the epitome of. But wait, there's more.
Yeah.
So it just seems to be this ever evolving story.
So Noodle, me and Jeff are trying to get blocked by Pastor Greg Locke, the terrorist scum and false prophet of the Antichrist first.
We're not trying to get blocked by Mark Hamill, though he probably will if he ever sees this stream.
Yeah, we're trying to get blocked by Greg Locke.
Yeah.
And I actually consider myself so my position on Disney is they produce good content, but they're a terrible company. So it's very much a enjoy the art, hate the the artist.
And I've got similar views to yourself, and especially as I definitely let's just put it this way. Myself and Badger had a little exchange on Twitter on a few things yesterday. Nothing nasty, but obviously anything pre-Disney owning Star Wars, anything post Disney owning Star Wars, Badger is like that's not true canon.
Yeah.
So I'm not so hard on some of what Disney has done with Star Wars. Some of it's been awful, some of it's been good, but yes, Disney as a company are fucking assholes.
And like there are Disney movies that I didn't see as a kid that I would like to revisit. Like, for one, I'd like to see Treasure Planet. I've heard good things about Treasure Planet. And though there is a noticeable dip in quality after the Disney Renaissance, with the exception of like Lilo and Stitch as an outlier. But for the, you can't discount Disney's place in the history of American cinematic animation, because for the most part it's one and the same. And
yeah,
and it's so okay. Hate on me for saying this, but all you want, and I'll say it and I'll own it and I'll say it again. I'll probably put it down on Twitter. Disney, Disney Animation Studios is the Shakespeare of American cinematic animation.
Yep, I'd go along with that.
In terms of quality, in terms of their place in the history of the medium. It all goes back to Disney up until this current era, and this where Sony's taking the lead in bringing strategic stylization into computer generated, into computer 3D animation, and that's a very exciting place in animation to be in as a consumer. So I don't consider, like, in terms of Disney, I love Disney because I love animation as a medium.
Cool.
Disney, Nerdy Rodent has obviously not seen Into the Spider-Verse or Mitchell's versus the Machines.
Yeah, I'm going along with that.
Yeah, I will say, like, their earlier, their Disney slump output is very much discount Disney, or rather discount DreamWorks, because everyone was following DreamWorks' lead of just dissing Disney. I mean, even Disney got in on the joke with Frozen.
I mean,
but nowadays Sony is taking the lead with bringing, because so Into the Spider-Verse came out and blew everyone's minds with the quality of their 3D animation and how they brought stylization into that medium. And Disney took notice, and they followed suit with Encanto, and with and through their Pixar studio with Turning Red. And I mean, even DreamWorks is following Sony's lead when they brought strategic stylization into the Bad Guys movie and into the Puss in Boots: The Last Wish movie that recently came out. I mean, I haven't seen those, but I can tell it from the trailers. Like, you can, there's a lot that, there's a lot to be said about trying to,
we can't,
you can't really get what, the entirety of what a movie is about from a trailer, but things like stylization, things like the feel of the animation, you can get that from a trailer.
I think, you've got to look with like Disney or not as a company, we cannot overstate the impact that they've had on this medium of animation. We cannot, they have a huge, I mean, they have influenced people so much over the world. Sometimes to the point where there's a reaction against other styles of animation. Hey, plug! Check out myself and Noodles' stream on Asterix in the Falling Sky, which was a fuck you to It's basically I love Disney and fuck Japanese anime book by Albert Durza. But
and arguably, in terms of Japanese anime style in the US, at least cinematically. Disney still got its fingerprints over that because guess who produced all of the studio, guess who released all the Studio Ghibli movies in the US? Disney.
Disney, yeah.
And, when you think of cinematic animation from Japan, at least as a Westerner, you think Miyazaki and Studio Ghibli.
So I'm just looking at Jenny's question there.
Because it's a villain song, and Disney villain songs are always on fire. Like the good on fire. But if you want to know about We Don't Talk About Bruno, we did do an episode on Encanto last year.
There you go.
But with that,
I just realizing we've almost gone twice as long as the film we're actually covering.
Yeah, so, but there was a lot of tangents about its place in the period of animation. So this is working very well as a primer for our discussion of
I think so,
how the Disney Renaissance changed American animation as we know it. Or at least briefly until Shrek came in and made everything 3D.
Yeah.
So tune in next week when we begin our discussion proper with with Beauty and the Beast and the early Disney Renaissance.
Yeah. I'm just going to reply to what Noodle put in the chat. To be fair, you're on. This is a stream where myself and Ring are talking about Batman for the most part, so it's gonna go long.
Yeah, or to be fair, this is where you've got Ring, where you have Ring fan dumping about their two big special interests, where comic books and and cinematic animation as a medium.
Yeah. If there was a Dungeons and Dragons tie-in, this would be a 5-hour-long stream.
Yeah. But so next week we're doing Beauty and the Beast, and then of course we're continuing on with the mid-Renaissance with the Lion King and tying it all in a bow with the late Renaissance and Disney's Hercules. Guess which one was picked by Noodle?
Yeah.
And actually, I think this will be like watching Hercules for this upcoming stream will be the first time I've sat down and watched it all the way through.
And I'm gonna make a confession here. I have never watched The Lion King. So believe it or not, I have never watched The Lion King. So this is going to be a new experience for me coming up.
Well, and I mean, you're also, I think you're a bit old to have the generational realization of like once you get to high school or or college.
I was sort of in that little generation of, as you say, I was too old when The Lion King came out to appreciate it, but never had like children or kids or anything or family where I could sit down and watch it with. So that's probably why I've never watched The Lion King.
But there is something of a generational phenomenon where, where kids who grew up in the 90s get to high school and they start reading Shakespeare, or they start studying Shakespeare for the first time, and they get to Hamlet and they realize, holy shit, this is just the Lion King with people. Or rather, The Lion King is Hamlet with lions.
I do actually think Hamlet would have been better with The Lion Sleeps Tonight, but
And I'm gonna have to say Tiamat is a Justice League level threat.
Yeah, that needs more that needs some more than Batman by himself.
Yeah. Oh, Batman will kick Kevin Sorbo's ass.
In fact, Batman could kick Kevin Sorbo's ass, but I'd like the entire Justice League to wail in on him.
Though, or
particularly Wonder Woman with a couple of nut shots.
Yeah, or maybe Jenny is talking about Hercules. No, we're going to be talking about the Disney Hercules, not.
No, because I'm sorry. I know people might have some nostalgia about it, but Kevin Sorbo's Hercules series was shit. I'm sorry. I'm dying on that hill. That was a shit series.
Or if you want to watch, or if you want to realize a series that was absolutely ruined by Kevin Sorbo, just watch Andromeda.
Yeah.
No, because you can tell, like, just watching.
You can tell that would have been so much better series if he wasn't in it. Yes.
Well, or rather, if he didn't get his chance to pull a Shatner and dictate the script.
Yeah.
But with that, so next week, Beauty and the Beast, then The Lion King, then Disney's Hercules. And with that, we're going to move to taglines. So, Scummer?
Don't really do taglines, but thanks for tuning in. Come watch me. Come check my channel out, and see you later. Salute.
And remember, the purpose of a storyteller is not to tell you how to think, but to give you questions to think on. Too often, we forget that. Also, Noodle dropped the series card in the chat, and I'll probably add that to the description because I forgot to.
Yeah.